Hello? Is it on? Okay. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Perfect. So, hello and welcome to our student plenary session. Thank you all very much for coming. So this is the session that me and our Aurora Student Council prepared for you, where we are going to present the results of our work we have done throughout the academic year. And we also have a fun discussion panel here prepared for you. So I'm just gonna try to move this slide. Or not? Oh, okay. Okay, so here is the overview, which is that we are gonna start with the introduction of the strategy document we developed. Then we're going to talk about the emphasis of the year we had this year, which was diversity and inclusion. And then we have a discussion panel we here with my lovely panelists on the inclusion of students in task teams. And now I believe that I will leave the panelists to introduce themselves. So Nana, if you want to start.
Hello. My name is Nana. I'm a student at the University of Iceland. I'm also the Aurora Student Council Secretary and the International Officer for the Student Council at University of Iceland. And I'm also a student in Task Team 8.3.
Hello, everyone. My name is Niels Hexper, and on behalf of Palatsky University, I lead Work Package 7 on capacity building and community engagement, which includes our task teams on student activities. And I'm particularly sitting here because I also lead and coordinate the Student Ambassador Program that's part of Task Team 7.2. So I'm looking forward to this interesting discussion.
Hello, my name is Alma. I work for the University of Iceland, and I lead Task Team 7.1 on student engagement and administrative support to students.
Hi, my name is Søren, and I'm the student representative for Copenhagen Business School in the Aurora Student Council, and I'm also working in the Aurora team at CBS, where I work closely with our IC in coordinating CBS engagement in the work packages and in the task teams. And through that, I'm especially engaged at the moment in task team 1.3 and 9.3, but also in several other work packages and task teams.
Thank you very much. And I realize that some of you may not know who I am. So my name is Hanush Patera, and I am the current president of the Aurora Student Council. And now moving on to our first point, the strategy document. Wonderful. The strategy document, the Aurora Student Council did not have like a long-term strategy before this year, and we felt like due to the very high turnover rate that the Student Council is facing due to the fact that students tend to graduate at some point and leave universities. And also a lot of them are elected into other roles, which are then affiliated with Aurora. So if they're not re-elected the next year, then they only want to have like a 1 year in the student council. And we found out that you really cannot do all that much in 1 year, despite the fact that you would really like to, and that there are some really important goals that should be worked on for a long period of time. So we created a strategy document that outlines the goals for the Aurora Student Council in the upcoming, or like the current second bid for the entirety of the second bid of the Aurora 2030 project. The strategy goals were shared with work package leaders and with the central office. And now I'm just gonna briefly go through them. So these are just some of the key points that we agreed were crucial for us as a student council and the way that we want to represent our local student bodies and students across Aurora universities. So the first point was that the Aurora Student Council, hereafter ASC, aims to achieve equal condition for all its members This means that every Aurora Student Council member should be financially rewarded for the work they do in Aurora. This is also something that the task team 7.1 is actively working on. The second point was that there should be a standardized role description of the Aurora Student Council member in the future. The responsibilities and expectations should be clearly laid out and applied to everyone. The third one was that the Student Council should aim for standardizing the interpretation of the GDPR law across Aurora universities so that the data regarding student population in terms of inclusion and diversity, which was very much on brand for our current emphasis of the year, can be collected. Then the Student Council should standardize the transition procedures in the Student Council, like establish a handover meeting, and with very clear points for when the retiring and the new member of the Student Council should go over like the role and the expectations. The Student Council should also push for standardization of the transition and working procedures, including evaluation and welcoming students in our activities such as work packages and task teams. Then we have a point regarding establishing connection with local student councils, which is very important because the outreach we have in the student council is limited, and while some of us are directly elected or affiliated with local university student councils, some are not, and we felt that those connections that a lot of universities are lacking, or if they are, that they're not really being used properly. So the ASC, we believe in the future, should focus on more like using the potential of local student councils and the outreach they can provide via their local channels and connections, because then we can really reach the general student population, and then they can at least know what Aurora is, hopefully. The next point is then that the Aurora Student Council should agree on a united presentation where it is clearly explained what is Aurora, the ultimate question, and what Aurora means for students. The Aurora Student Council should work closely with the Aurora communications team. Aurora social media should be as interactive as possible, and in the future there should be ideally a set minimum amount of posts per month. The Aurora Student Council also should become more familiar with the roles of Aurora so that everyone in the council knows who to contact in all possible situations. The task team 1.3 sustainability of the Alliance, Aurora 2030 Plus, is focused on this. So this is something we just felt was important to clarify in the strategy document. And the Aurora Student Council should choose an emphasis to focus on each academic year. This has been always done in the past so far. And the topics listed below are appropriate, giving the focus of Aurora, and should be taken into consideration. For example, topics such as equality and inclusivity, access to higher education, or sustainable consumption. Also, the Aurora Student Council should agree on certain action points related to the chosen emphasis that they vote on at the first in-person meeting. Then the Aurora Student Council should be present at the following events to ensure cross-alliance communication and work, which the events are the European Student Assembly in Strasbourg, which is held every year, the 4EU2 group meetings, and the European University Student Ambassador Forum, which was newly established, and the first meeting is going to be held in Warsaw. Then the Aurora Student Council should create an overview regarding travel costs and travel reimbursements, because they very much differ across universities. And the Aurora Student Council then works to ensure student inclusion in all relevant task teams, whether that be direct student participation or making sure that the Aurora Student Council is informed in the process of the task team. And the last 2 points relate to the Aurora Student Council should work to identify student priorities with each relevant work package and task team. And the Aurora Student Council then should aim to have at least 2 physical meetings per academic year. I mean, this year, this is our 4th, so I would say we're right on target, exceeding expectations, so that's good. And I would like this number to be kept in the future. So this was quite the extensive list, but I felt that it was important to share with everyone. I asked the task team and work package leaders for feedback, and the feedback I've got was positive. And that, of course, some of the goals are easier to reach than others, but I believe that it's the continuous effort that really counts here, and that this effort should be maintained for the entirety of the second bid. Now moving on with our presentation. No? Yes. So we can move on to our emphasis of the year. So like I mentioned in the strategy document, every year the Aurora Student Council chooses an emphasis to focus on. In the past, the emphasis have been mobilities or mental health. And the past academic year, we focused on diversity and inclusion. So how did that look like for our Aurora Student Council? We started with identifying 3 key emphases at each university in terms of where diversity and inclusion could be improved at your local university, which means that every student council member was tasked with finding out what the priorities were and the issues at their local university. We compiled these key emphases into a list, and then we discussed them extensively throughout our various meetings. And we then identified some key policy implementation proposals, which I'm going to be talking more at length here. The overview you can see in the presentation, and I'm going to explain each one a bit more so it's a bit clearer. So for the policy, the first one was that the goal should be to have more power for the student parliament overall. Students should be a part of all the decision making on all the levels, including the European level. While the representation of students in decision making bodies is important, we believe that the next step would be to allow for students to have more power when it comes to voting and pursuing decisions through. The second point relates to the position of an equality officer and equality days, which should be established at each university. We took this great initiative from the University of Iceland, where the position of equality officer is already established, and an equality action plan is developed every 3 years, and we feel like this is a great best practice that should be shared across Aurora universities. Many documents and texts on the topic of the equality officer and equality action plan are already established and in existence, so we believe it is important to have these documents available and established in proper places. So the idea here is really to have an action plan that needs to be followed rather than just a set of recommendations. Such plans can follow, for example, the RACI matrix or other appropriate ways of monitoring. And in this plan, there needs to be an overarching goal that needs to be reached, and there should be a formal body and conditions that need to be followed. Another point that we felt was important to focus on and be identified as key across most of our universities were disability issues, where universities should aim to have the information regarding disability support readily available, which is not always the case. That information is often very hard / impossible to find. And, you know, I think first great step would be establishing like a checklist of what support do you have and what support you're lacking, and then kind of start from that. Then the last point related to diversity education for staff, where the Student Council felt it should be mandatory for new staff to receive such training based on materials developed by professionals, where here it's important to discuss with relevant interest organization which materials should be covered. And first step can also be have the material and guidelines at least readily available, if not enforced in a training format, but eventually a course should be mandatory. Alternatively, these materials should also be mandatory for students, especially those in health and education, where student training material on how to work inclusively in group projects should also be provided. So this is the overview of the key policy implementations we identified from the 3 key areas at each local university, and this was mutually agreed upon and voted upon in the Aurora Student Council. And now I would like to move to a discussion panel on the topic of student inclusion in task teams. This was something that we also heavily discussed and worked on in the Aurora Student Council over the last year. We also mentioned it or discussed it with a lot of you during the kickoff event in Iceland. And now I have some questions prepared for the panelists, and let's see where the discussion takes us. So my first question would be, what does participation of students in task team actually mean? I mean, is it being informed? Is that enough, or is it really being included in the work? If you want to start.
Thank you. So this sort of leads right into what I would most like to talk about during this panel, because I think one of the issues when talking about student participation is that you don't really realize what it means. There's a sociologist called Roger Hart who created a model called the ladder of youth participation. And the idea is that you want to be at the top of the ladder where initiatives are youth-initiated, youth-led, and decisions are shared with adults. But there are many steps below this, and at the very bottom you have things like tokenism, where you ask students to be involved, but you only do it so you can say they are involved, or even manipulation, where students will be present, but they are not actually involved in decision-making, they are not informed. And I think there is a lack of information of what it means to include a student. It is not sufficient to just say, you are welcome here, or we would like you to go to this meeting. They also need to be asked for their opinions. They need to be adequately informed to the same level of all the other meeting participants. And that may require some more effort. And one thing you also have to remember is that the participation of students is based on interest. And I'm sure everyone here is very interested in Aurora, but most of you here are also getting paid to be interested in Aurora. That is not the case for most students. And that means that it takes some more effort to get them to the same level of commitment. So for me, student participation is way more than just being invited and being informed. It is actually being given the space to say what you think and do what you want. And I think there is still opportunity within Aurora to create a space where youth and students can create their own projects and bring their own ideas to the table. And I think we really need to support that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a really great detailed answer, and I personally could not agree more. Niels, do you want to respond?
Yes, of course. This is a very tough act to follow after such a good detailed and theoretical response. But I was really happy to hear what you said about the ladder of participation, because I think what we are trying to do, and we're not yet there, but we're trying to get there with the Student Ambassador Program, is meaningful participation. And there, for me, meaningful is really the key word, and a word that should go both ways. I think as university staff, as academics, there is this quite obvious pitfall of thinking too much about what students can do for us as professionals. Can we have students as a sounding board? Can we have students to participate this? But then you would go towards the more tokenistic ways of representation that Nana just mentioned. And I think what is really important for task team participation in particular, but any student participation in Aurora, that we always try to keep meaningfulness in mind, and then particularly from the point of view from the student. So not so much how is this meaningful for us as staff, but what does a student actually get out of this? How do we, through this participation, facilitate them to actually co-create what we are doing, or how, if it is not about co-creation, how do we make sure that it is in another way a meaningful experience for the students? I think that should be leading. We try to have that at the core of everything we try to do, at least within work package 7. But like I started with, there's always room for development and having those concepts move from theory to coming actually in fruition in the offer we have for our students in terms of participation.
Thank you very much. Now I turn to my other side. Alma?
Yeah, as you've spoken about, student participation in task teams doesn't necessarily just mean that students are being invited to all task team meetings and sitting there as passive listeners, because that way neither the student nor the task team is really gaining anything from that supposed interaction. Ideally, student participation in task teams is mutually beneficial. So the students are getting something out of it. They're training soft skills. They're working in an international environment. And this can be, it doesn't just have to be like they attend the regular task team meetings. It can be a specific task that students are tasked with. And they work in group work with a task team lead. That may, in some instances, prove more beneficial than simply attending meetings. And then students would then be given an option to present their findings or results to the task team as a whole and kind of integrate them into the task team work. And throughout this work, they would get the chance to work with students across all of our institutions, train their international competencies and cultural competencies, soft skills, and public speaking, ideally. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's all about contribution of students, right? So we want to be able to integrate students in the task team so that they can have meaningful contributions. Yeah, so it's about contributions, and we really want to integrate students in a way that they can contribute meaningfully to the task team. And to do so, maybe there is a special preparation process needed for it, but then also the task team members and the task team leads get more out of it, right? You don't want to have the students be sitting there just for the sake of them having them sitting there, but you want to have a value out of it, and you get this value mostly if you integrate them actively, if you give them tasks, if you allow them to raise their opinion, if you give them options to really actively participate and to contribute, then it's not only interesting for the students, but it's also, they learn something, and also it's interesting for the academics, for the staff. They really get to know the students' perspective on the task team topics, and you can really be integrated into the technicalities from the task teams. Some are really narrow and technical, but if you really integrate students there also, you get a student's perspective on things you would otherwise not have a student's perspective on. And then it's also really valuable for so many task team leads. I think that's a good summary of it.
Thank you so much to all of my panelists. What I'm really gathering here that really there needs to be, I think that, yeah, Alma mentioned the preparation process of like how to best make sure that it's a meaningful participation. And I truly believe that, yes, it might be more difficult and, yeah, more time consuming in the beginning, but we all hope and believe that Aurora is here for the long run. So I would encourage then everyone to consider this process, because I think that what this panel agreed upon so far is that the benefits in the long run of doing this now and making sure that there is a process to ensure or try to ensure a meaningful student participation would then be so much more beneficial for Aurora for the years to come. Moving on to our next question is then, how can we then promote our task teams to students? This time I can start on this side. Soren, if you want to start.
I think we have to create a win-win situation here. We have to make clear to the students what they can get out of student participation in task teams, but we also have to make clear to task team leaders and task team members what benefits they get by including the students, such as meaningful contribution from them. And that means we have to be able to communicate to the students what the task team is about. So what is it about? What is the goal of it? And also what specifically students can contribute here, how they can participate, in which ways they really concretely and specifically can do something in the task team. Then it gets more tangible for so many students, and it raises also interest in students to participate, and then also spread the word. There are student ambassadors already in task teams, and if they have a great experience in doing so, we have to get the word out to other students so that they, in the next years, will also participate, and this will be just, it's like a snowball effect, right? And we started now, and if Aurora continues for many, many years to come, the more years come, the better it gets, and the more students get included, and also the more task team leads get acquainted to including students. There will be best practices. It will be much easier and much faster to include students. And then we have to just start now, and then we go along, and we will start the process, and we will on a good way to include students for many years to come.
I think if we're speaking generally about the benefits of taking part in task team work, we can promote it as an opportunity for personal and professional development, something you can add to your CV, a chance to impact the development of your specific higher education institution, but also higher education across Europe and perhaps globally with our global partners. And if we then hone in on promoting specific task teams, I tend to function in the way that I always prefer having as much information as possible. So having concise summaries of what work is being worked on at each task team, at task team level, and making that information available to the students so that they can educate themselves on where they can have an impact, what task teams align with their specific interests, and yes, using the kind of preparatory period before students choose task teams very wisely to provide them with the information so that they know that what they're stepping into. Hopefully that would result in more active participation and less nominal participation.
Thank you very much. I agree. I personally see nothing wrong with little extrinsic motivation. Nana, if you want to continue.
I agree with everything that was said, and I think like clarity and more information are key points, but I also think that promotion is not the biggest issue, because even as it is, you have people that want to be in task teams when they really don't know what they're expected to do or what the task team is trying to achieve. For me, the bigger issue is sort of maintaining the students that have signed up for the task teams in those task teams. And I think the way to do that is to really, for each task team leader, think about how they would like to be received in a task team, especially as a student, and how they can make students a key part of the decision process. Because it's, you know, once they enter, it's a bit, okay, you figure out what you want to do in here. And that's a nice prerogative to have, but it's also nice to have some guidance. So I think continuing to provide the information necessary, having a space where it's okay to ask questions, and also stupid questions that everyone else might know, but that you might not know if you don't have 5 or 10 years of work experience in this field. Those are some of the things that I think are really important beyond the promotional aspects, and that I hope each task team leader will sort of review what can be done for their students.
Thank you. Niels?
Yes, I'm really happy you mentioned that, because I think this has been indeed for the Student Ambassador Program one of the major challenges over the past years, but since it has been started, really, like, how do we, again, coming back to this concept of meaningful participation, how do we connect students in a way with a task team that they are actually able to contribute, and how do we make sure that that is done structurally from task team to task team? Because all of our different working groups. Of course, they have quite different workflows, quite different ways of working, and it is sometimes difficult of matching students there. We had initially, when the student ambassador program started, there was broad participation, and the goal was to have one student in each task team, but this didn't really work, and the feedback from the students that participated in that was quite negative in the case of a lot of task teams, in that they did not really have anything to do. It was the situation as you described, where there was one student who could not really participate. There was not really a lot of space for them to express their ideas. In the past 2 years, we've tried to narrow that down to a more selected number of task teams, which I think has improved participation and allowed students to work in groups. But still, I think there's space to be won, and I think within Work Package 7 we want to develop new ways of matching students to task teams. One of the ideas that came to mind and that we want to look into implementing further is, for example, having a bit of a task team fair. I remember a year or two ago I was at URV, where they had this service learning fair matching students with service learning initiatives, and I think that this could be a great best practice or an example to build on. So then task team leaders would be invited to present to student ambassadors, not just a participation opportunity in the task team in general, but would be invited to really present a concrete offer for a group of students to work on together, and then students, based on their interest, could decide whether that is working for them or not. And I think this is just one of the ways that we can try to further develop the way we match students, because the interest is there. We every year have over 100 students, this year over 130, who sign up to be an ambassador. More than half of those want to be actively involved in a task team. And in some cases it works very well, in some cases it doesn't. And I think it is our responsibility as a community to make sure that the vast majority of students who want to join in a task team have a very positive educational experience being a part of that group.
Thank you, and that's a fantastic idea. If I can kind of build up on that, like how would you structure this fair? Like, would it be like an online form where the task team leaders would be present and they would present one by one, or how do you imagine this working? Because I think that this would really help.
I think this is something we still have to develop. As some of you might know, this year's Student Ambassador program was done in addition to what was written in the program. If we would have just followed the Aurora 2030 proposal, there wouldn't have been a Student Ambassador program in this academic year, which we felt was unacceptable. So we did the same program essentially as we offered in the past year, to just have something to offer for our students. I think now is the moment to sit and redevelop this for the upcoming year. I think the most fun we have been over the past years doing these yearly Aurora student conferences, so dedicated student events where students can get and travel. It would be nice to have at least part of such a fair in person in such an occasion, if possible. Although realistically speaking, we know that funds for such events are limited and not everyone would be able to travel there. So for inclusivity's sake, it would always have to be hybrid and possibly online only if that is more practical, which also I think looking at Aurora's, the long-term developments, it could be a suggestion for me to start having it online and then based on the feedback from that, try to elaborate on that further through hybrid or in-person fairs. But yeah, this is something we still have to develop, really.
Thank you very much. Any comments from any of my panelists? Yes, there we have a question. Of course.
Thank you. I would like to contribute with a question or a remark. So in the last project, I was in team 3.4.2. It was a digital society and global citizenship. And we worked very closely with Aurora students. We had 5 students participating in our team, and they contributed greatly to the development of the Eurydice project, which was the proposal, which was our task at that time. So we developed that, and the students were actively participating in, and they also wrote a letter of support, which was helpful for getting this proposal. And they also, it was very important because of the design of that project, that is actually the design of a joint master, that is totally new and is innovative education. So we wanted to have the feedback from the students to know how that should be designed. So if you make this joint degree over multiple Aurora universities in Europe and you have to travel, etc. So it involved a lot of thinking and creativity. And the students really participated greatly. What our challenge was actually was that they had to be present, and I don't like very much hybrid. I really like presence, physically being present with each other, at least a few times, because then you get to know each other. And these students were from different Aurora universities, and it was very good that they met each other and they talked to each other and they talked to us, the team that was designing. So we really had co-creative sessions with the students and they really liked it. The challenge was the travel budget. And it was also challenging to persuade the managers, or I don't know, people who decide about the budget, that we wanted the same students to participate several times and not every time a new student, because then it doesn't work, then you don't create a team. So these are the challenges, and I would like to ask if that is possible in the current situation also to have that, because we are designing now this curriculum and we really want the students to participate in the co-design and actively, not just tokenism. Really, we want this to happen.
Thank you very much. That's an excellent question, and I believe this ties into the opportunities we have to use other sorts of funding than just travel funds, such as making it into like a short-term mobility course or tying into learning outcomes. But we have two representatives from the admin side here, so I'm just gonna let them answer this. If you want to start, Alma.
Sure. This is a difficulty in general because we don't have the same mobility budget as we had in the first bid. There are a limited number of trips allocated per work package, and I can't really speak for all of our institutions because these are institutionally budgeted. But I can say that for the University of Iceland, we have counted out exactly how many trips per work package we have the budget for. And we are very aware of the fact that we are encouraging students to take part in these trips so they would be counted as a full work package member. And if the work package or task team lead requests their presence, although we would say there would need to be a good reason for the in-person meeting at all, the student would count as a full work package member and a task team member. So they would be treated as equal in that regard.
Thank you. Niels?
Yeah, no, I can only agree with that. I think for the kind of student community that we want to develop, this is in fact one of the fundamental problems, that on the one hand, our approach to mobility would be to want to offer something that is as broad as possible and give as many individual students the opportunity to go once. On the other hand, for the creation of this meaningful participation, I do 100% agree that ideally we would want to give the same students the opportunity to participate at several in-person opportunities throughout the year to actively contribute to something. I think that is for everyone involved, for the students and for the task teams. I think it makes the experience more valuable. But unfortunately, also in a literal sense, it makes it more costly. And those funds, like what Alma was saying, I think they are right now institutionally there. I hope that in the future, through either like tying it into more traditional accredited mobility opportunities, or finding different fundings that are a way to facilitating more in-person student participation and more regular participation by the same students. For now, and this is, I guess, kind of coming back to what I said with this kind of matchmaking fair, perhaps it would have to, in the start, be more online and hybrid with the clear and express intention of looking for opportunities to facilitate in person. And then Anna, to come back to your final question, of course, we would be very happy to again then offer also the opportunity to Aurora student ambassadors to participate in your edition, to continue that co-creation approach, because also I think it's good to highlight again that the student reviews from the students that participated in what was then Task Team 3.4 were also they were also glowing. Like, this was really an example of what we had in mind, of students from across universities coming together and in a way of structured group work by the task team, actively contributing to something that was then meaningful and useful. Yeah, I think it's good to highlight again how that was exactly what we had in mind with the Student Ambassador Program, and this is something that we want to facilitate more of in the future.
Thank you very much. Okay, and then this discussion brings me right to my next question, which is, what do you think is the biggest obstacle when it comes down to student inclusion? Nana?
I think I've addressed it a little bit already, that I think the biggest obstacle is realizing that there is no sort of one-fits-all solution, and it's a long, ongoing process if you really want to become good at involving students and sort of having it be this automatic reaction that we basically want, that every time there is an important question you need to discuss or an important decision that needs to be made, then of course students are also asked for their opinion and their viewpoints. That just takes a while to sort of incorporate and more so to create a safe space where students can come forward on their own and not be afraid to bring forward the solutions and address that there might be some decisions they think need to be made that the others should then be involved in deciding on. I think that is a really key step. Yeah, and then, I also think that there are more opportunities outside of task teams for students to be involved, and that the ambassador program can be used even more. So it's not just, an email list that you're on to get all of these opportunities, but also more of an arena where all the ambassadors are encouraged to step forward if they have an idea or a project, and also educated in how to do that and how to execute their project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Niels, if you want to continue.
Yes, thank you. I think that aligns with what, for me, would be the biggest obstacle, and that is this this mid-level participation, because I think, as Nana said, there are a lot of students that are now essentially as ambassadors on a mailing list, and they are interested in learning more about Aurora quite passively, and then they might, throughout the course of a year, be interested in one or two of the opportunities that we propose. So, and there we have, again, like I said, like over 130 students this year who signed up for that, which I think is great in terms of participation. I think we then also, we have on the other end of the spectrum, we have students like the members of the student council and a lot of the ambassadors here today who are really, really motivated in spending and dedicated a lot of time and really going deep into Aurora and contributing and actively participating. And I think what we're struggling with and what the biggest obstacle is finding an interesting offer to engage students a little bit more than just passively taking in information and maybe participating in one or two short online opportunities. And then the students who are ready to spend 100 years, or 100 years, not hopefully, 100 hours over the year in participation opportunities. And really that middle ground is where we hope that through redeveloping the Student Ambassador Program, we can get to meaningful participation where students can feel like, okay, for a couple of hours per month, throughout my academic year, I get something really valuable out of this. And this has been the main difficulty, I think, is finding an offer that really resonates with that category of students who do not want to go super deep, but who also do want to be more engaged than to just passively be informed. I think this is a big obstacle for us.
Thank you. And kind of following up on that, like you mentioned that there is, a lot of students who sign up, and then there's like a fairly certain or small percentage that really want to be like deeply active. So do you think that there should be a vetting process for students who want to be part of task teams? Like, should we then do some kind of pre-selection, or is that just going to deter them from even applying in the first place?
For me, I would say that a vetting process is too strict of a way to put it. I think for student participation, I think one of the main things that we would want to do is, first of all, lower the barriers as much as possible. But then again, coming back to it being meaningful and mutually beneficial for both the task teams and the students, I think particularly for the more technical task teams or more technical assignments that task teams might have, it would be good, and this is where I would see, for example, such a fair come in with matching students, because if there is a clear description in advance of, okay, this is what task team X or task team Y expects from a student, then a student will be able to, in that sense, vet themselves by seeing like, okay, this does not align with my interests or competences, and then we won't have that problem, I hope, by having the task teams come up with a concrete offer for students. I think we would circumvent that necessity, because then we would only get students hopefully to respond when it's actually something that they are interested in.
Thank you. Now I turn to Alma, and Alma only. As you can see, Son has left us. He had to go catch a flight home. He has an exam tomorrow, but he told me he likes to live on the edge, so let's all pray for him. And Alma, what is the biggest obstacle when it comes to student inclusion?
If we kind of look further into contextualizing why it may be difficult to engage some students on a deeper level, I want to talk a little bit about the latest Euro Student Survey, which is a survey that's performed regularly, and the last one was performed over the years 2018 to 2021 across 26 European nations, including 8 out of 9 of our full partner institutions. And this survey found that across the nations polled, students on average spend around 47 hours a week on either study or work. And that goes down to 38 hours per week for those who do not have paid work during the semester time, and up to 62 hours per week on average for those who work alongside their studies. So that's almost 9 hours per day, including weekends. To further contextualize my position on this, I come from Iceland, where only 27% of students work 10 or less hours per week during term time, and also around 30% of students have children. So that's compared to 11% across all of the nations polled. So students already have a lot on their plates, and according to the Euro Student Survey, 4 out of 5 students, or 82% of those polled, are dissatisfied with their weekly time budget and how it is spent. 40% would like to spend more time on work, and 39% would like to spend more time on their studies. So the vast majority of our target demographic already feel overworked and feel that they have too few hours in the week to fully focus on the responsibilities that they already have. That's one major obstacle that we're facing. Add on to that the fact that Aurora's work is incredibly varied and ambitious and wide-reaching. This can certainly be viewed as one of our strengths. We're incredibly ambitious. We touch on, or we try to touch on, almost every aspect of the higher education environment and experience, but this does mean that it does take some time to grasp the scope of our work to the point where you can accurately and confidently represent the interests of the collective student body, or even just the general student body of the institution that you are representing. It's quite a tall order. It requires time and it requires support. So as I see it, the biggest challenges that we face when it comes to guaranteeing successful and meaningful student inclusion, it's twofold. Students are already overworked, and those who are interested and able to take part in our work are only going to be students for a set number of years. The high turnover rate, meaning that students who get to the point where they can engage in a very meaningful way with our work, that's a continuous effort, getting them there. Student inclusion and engagement is not ever going to be a box that we can tick and just rest on our laurels. We are going to have to set up systems and continuously integrate new students into our work as our current engaged students graduate. So I think that's one of the challenges that we can actually work on, is how do we set those systems in place? How do we get students to the point where they're ready to actively take part in our work and represent the interests of our student bodies?
Thank you very much. Those were not the rookie numbers you mentioned in that survey. I mean, damn. That brings me to the next question, and it's been a point that has been raised by one of our panelists, which I think is a great one, is that most of us in this room are very interested in Aurora, but also most of us in this room are paid to be interested in Aurora, and the students in task teams are often not. So the question is, do we pay students in task teams? And if not, for obvious reasons like budgets, how do we then reward them? Nana, if you want to start.
I mean, ideally, being in a task team should be rewarding in some way in itself, but that is, often not the case. At least if you don't, if you're not properly integrated and you're not getting that meaningful, anything meaningful out of it, any skills that you can use further on in your career. So I think really anything would be nice. Payment for, if we want students in every task team and several students in every task team, payment seems unrealistic. But some form of recognition, for example, at the University of Iceland, on your diploma, if you have been involved in student council work, you can get it recognized on your diploma when you graduate. And I think, I do not believe that that's an option if you've been involved in an Aurora task team. But I think maybe it should be, because it is something that is very closely tied with university and in most cases with your studies as well. And it is something that you can take directly to a potential employer or another institution that you would like to apply to and show, I go the extra mile. I'm not just doing the minimum, I'm actually getting involved in the environment where I'm studying. And that has some value, even if it's not monetary.
I think that absolutely should be an option. Thank you very much. Niels?
Yes, I think when it comes to remuneration of students, I think the first thing that we should consider is, are we asking the students to structurally, that means like on a weekly or monthly basis, do specific things, and do we hold them responsible for the quality of those outcomes? Because if that's what we're asking them to do a job, we're asking them to work. And if we are asking people to do work, I think it's only fair that then they are remunerated. I also agree that I do not think that that is the most realistic way of setting up meaningful task team participation across Aurora, because for the obvious budgetary reasons, but also practically, like, not every task team might have an actual job for students to do, and that's also okay. It's fine if that is a little bit more low threshold, but I think this is always the consideration that we should, maybe not just as universities, but I think as organizations or as employers in general, we should have, like, are we asking people to do an actual job, in which case, go ahead and pay them. Task team participation, again, doesn't have to be that, but in order to create more ways for students to do a little bit more work, particularly for those that are that are interested in really going much deeper into Aurora, or who already have a certain expertise in a particular area, I think we could consider setting up things like Aurora internships, which is something that we have heard as a best practice from various other alliances, where they encourage students from one university to go on, for example, an Erasmus internship at another Aurora University. This could be a really interesting way to, in that sense, have our cake and eat it too. We could have students be remunerated as an Aurora or as an Erasmus internship by then contributing to Aurora activities at another university. And then that might tick a lot of the boxes that we would want. But again, I think like with carefully matching students to a particular task team here, then as well, this requires some administrative support and a certain platform on which this takes place and is coordinated. But I think that is a really interesting way of looking for more paid opportunities for our students to contribute to Aurora in a meaningful way.
Thank you very much. Alma?
Yeah, I agree with what's been said before. I also see some complications if we were to have paid student positions within task teams because of the budgeting that we have done so far. That would need to come from an institutional level, which would create an impetus for the institutions to direct students into specific task teams where they would see the most benefit from them, which is a very natural occurrence, but would limit the kind of choice of students in this taking part in task team work. It would also come with several other complications on top of that, including the vetting process that you have mentioned before, further training of students, and so on. Noting students' work on behalf of Aurora in diploma supplements would, in my opinion, be a more feasible goal without undervaluing what type of work goes into this recognition. Through all of our institutions, it would be a massive undertaking, but it would be a very valuable one. And we would require kind of a more comprehensive and verifiable overview of the amount of work that students do on behalf of task teams, but I would still say that that would be a beneficial avenue to pursue. And as an alternative, before we're able to implement that, awarding certificates for the completion of their work, where we could go into a slightly more detailed account of what this certification actually certifies, mentioning the specific task team student took part in, and an overview of the training and skills that they developed through their work in this task team. I believe that would provide a bit more weight.
And I agree. Thank you very much. Nana?
I wanted to add that I think this also ties into the discussion about remuneration of Aurora Student Council members. And this is actually kind of a workaround to reward students in task teams. I know everyone is tired of talking about this, but the Aurora Student Council would really like all elected members to be paid to some degree. And the thing is that once you are being paid, then you can also expect a bit more from people. And the student council members are essentially the most qualified students to partake in task teams because they know the most about Aurora and its mission. But you can't really do it the other way around, where you say, okay, you have the burden of being an Aurora Student Council member. We also want you to be a task team, but we're not going to pay you. You have to sort of say, okay, we recognize that you are doing a job, you're working by being an Aurora Student Council member, by traveling several times a year, participating in meetings, both with the council and institutionally. And then once you are being rewarded for that, that can also include work in task teams. And I believe it is the case that most of the student council members that are currently being remunerated are active in task teams. So just to say this works, and yeah, we would love to give our expertise if you want to pay us for it.
Thank you so much, and I can confirm that we can see a direct correlation between the people who are in the student council and then choose to go into a task team and those who do not. And that difference is whether they're getting paid or not for their position in the Aurora Student Council. And from the discussions with some of you, you told me that, in your task team, you want someone who at least has a basic grasp of what Aurora is, and it's so much easier to have someone who already kind of knows what they're getting into. And your first line of applicants could be the Aurora Student Council. It's just that they don't really all have the option to just devote free time. So I see a question in the audience. We have a microphone somewhere, I believe.
Jean-Luc Dubois-Andé from UPEC. Just a question. Have you an idea of the budget it would be just to pay students and getting them more involved? Because if you 1 million, it's it's important because it can be an issue also to try to find more money because it's so important. So perhaps you have to define the budget of what would be, I would say, important for for that, and perhaps you can then think about how we can get more money to do it.
I think the question of budget, I think that what all of these discussions tend to come down to. But I feel like with the student inclusion, it wouldn't have to be such a drastic budget as if we were talking millions, since we wouldn't really ask students to work full time. Also, students tend to not be the most qualified, so they don't require a special pay brackets, really. So I think that the budget would not be as drastic as it might seem firsthand.
I can give a slightly more detailed answer to this. This is milestone 26 in the new bid includes student remuneration. And what we're looking at in task team 7.1 is a 10% position, which would be equal to around 4 hours per week. And that would be in accordance with local legislation when it comes to payment. So I can't give you a firm amount because we have different expectations for pay brackets between our countries. But what we're looking at is a 10% position. So whatever that would amount to in your countries.
Thank you very much. And now we have a very special guest who joined us, the mayor of Naples. So I would like to now officially welcome him, and we will interrupt the session and continue after his presentation. So.
Maybe, yeah.
So thank you for this wonderful panel. I think you will keep working afterwards. I'm very happy and proud to welcome here Professor Gaetano Manfredi, who is the mayor of Napoli currently. He was supposed to be yesterday here, but he couldn't for institutional reasons. The commitment of Gaetano is signified by his presence today. A few words to introduce Professor Manfredi Gaetano as a friend. He was the rector when Federico II in 2019 joined the Aurora network, and he also pushed us in joining the alliance and the first round of the alliance. He is a very close friend to Aurora and the Aurora community, so I'm really happy with Bruno to welcome Gaetano here today. Thanks, Gaetano.
Thank you very much for your invitation and welcome in Naples. For us, for our city, for me, is a very big pleasure to have you here. I think that the Aurora community, the Aurora network, is a very important community in this international and European situation. Because now we have a new challenge. We have to support an idea of a Europe that is a construction for the inclusion, for the relation of the people, for the importance of the education, for the peace, for the development, for an idea of a very large European community. And we have to work in this direction. It is very important because it is necessary to support this idea of Europe, and Europe in which the diversity is a value, is an opportunity to support the knowledge of the people and to have the possibility to include everyone in our idea, in our community, in our university. Therefore, I think that Naples is a city that in the history is a city of inclusion, is a city of relation, is a city in which the diversity is a value. And we hope that the idea of Naples, the spirit of Naples, the spirit of our university, that is a university that is open on the Mediterranean Sea, could be a good support to the work of the Aurora community. Thank you very much to stay here with us, and I hope that your idea will be our idea for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaetano. And I'm particularly pleased that this moment was when our students are speaking and helping us in understanding how to shape this future. So thank you also to you for this opportunity. I give back the floor to you, to your work. Thanks.
Thank you. And thank you very much. Okay, so thank you all very much. I just have one more question for my panelists, and I believe that it's one that we kind of hinted at already. And that is that, well, there are alliances out there that started at the exact same time as Aurora, ECTU, for example, to mention a concrete example. And they already have students in all the task teams, and we currently do not. So why do you think that is? And is a student in every task team really necessary?
For me, I do think there should be students in every task team. I understand the more practical perspective that it's not as easy in every task team as it may be in others. But if you kind of, think about that Aurora is meant to make the world better and do that for students, then students have valuable information that you can't get anywhere else. And every single task team should recognize that and realize that the knowledge of students is relevant for them. Also in the more sort of technical task teams, at least if it involves an end product that is supposed to be used by students as end users, then you should test it and develop it together with the students that are going to be using it later on. I think one of the most obvious examples is the web page that, like, every single student that becomes interested with Aurora, they say, I don't understand the web page, and it's it's a mess, and we say, yeah. And I know that there are people working on it. But I think that is a place where it does make sense to involve students and say, what would you like to see? What should be the first thing you see? And where can you find the information that you need? So for me, the obvious answer is that there should be students in every task team. And if you are a task team leader that disagrees, I think you should maybe look inward and consider how you can adjust. Thank you.
Before we move on, I just want to point out that me and Niels and Alma sat in a meeting with representatives of another alliance, which I will not mention here, and we were all heavily scolded for our website and the way how it's absolutely impossible to find any student-related information there, and that it was extremely difficult for them to really even understand what Aurora offers to students. So. I understand that it's a work in progress, but I believe that if we claim to be a student-centered alliance, then this is the area that really needs to be improved, improved rapidly, and this is something that should be focused on. Niels?
Yes, thank you. No, so of course I completely agree as well that ideally we would have student participation in all of these things, and I think to particularly to switch some hats to the work package 10.1 communications hat that I also wear. We are of course aware of the difficulty, and as you know. And as we have mentioned, I think previously as well, the website is currently under review. I think we would all wish that we had the resources to just go like this and have the website be changed. But as we all know, building a website and having information presented there accurately is quite a lot of work, especially if that hasn't been funded appropriately. So in that sense, I do want to reassure everyone in the room once again that the website is being redeveloped and that students are currently included in every step of that process. Some of those students are in this room right now even and processing some of these things. So please, I want to make sure that you all know that those issues are addressed, but I would also like to ask for your patience and understanding that creating and redeveloping a website, particularly a website that deals with something as complex as what we are trying to communicate, that does take a lot of time and resources, which are, unfortunately for all the people involved, at times quite scarce. But then to move away from just a matter of student inclusion in the reshaping of the website and how we communicate, I think it is important that we have student inclusion across all of our task teams in any way to make sure that what we are producing, like you said as well before, that it really aligns with what students want, and that we are not just creating things that look nice on paper or that are made based on our assumption of what students want without actually addressing those things. But I do think also it is important to keep in mind that task team participation, and I think this is what was hinted on before also when we were saying in some cases it's better to have student council members who are deeper in the Aurora matter participate. This participation across task teams does not have to look the same, and I think that this is really important and maybe also an appeal to all of the task team leaders in this group. Please take it now as a given that you have to incorporate students in a meaningful way, and please come up with ideas of how to do and facilitate that.
Alma?
Yeah, of course, I'd love to see students actively engaged in all aspects of our work. The priority for me needs to be, though, that their engagement serves a purpose and is a positive experience. And I do think that requires further work. We're already taking steps towards that end goal, but I think we need to focus on ironing out the kinks of student participation as we have it and sharing best practices and expanding the scope of their engagement. rolling out kind of student participation in all task teams could lead to frustration on both the students and task team side if it's not completely thought out beforehand. So I think we are working in the right direction, but I think we need to take a few more steps before we can secure meaningful student participation in all task teams. I also do want to point out that I think comparing alliances is slightly more complex than this when we're looking at alliances that have managed to secure student participation in all task teams. It's important to ask questions such as, what is the scope of their work? How large are these alliances? How many work packages do they have? How many students in total are engaged? Is it a limited number of students that are taking on a lot of work? How are they engaged? Are they actively engaged? How many students per task team? What is their level of involvement? And so on. So I think that we are definitely working towards the end goal of having meaningful student participation in all task teams. And I look forward to seeing us take those next steps towards securing that.
All valid points. Thank you all very much. And that's a wrap on our discussion. If you have any questions from the audience, we have a couple minutes, so we would love to hear them. If not, then I see a question.
Is it working? Hi, Is it working? Yeah, good. Anne, Copenhagen Business School, thank you for your insights and perspectives. What I thought better than and I already started thinking for one of my task teams. What I liked is the idea, make little tasks in the complexity of Aurora, and then what I would like is not a yearly fair, but make like a marketplace where you can just post it. Who is interested? There's my contact. If you have a better idea, reach out. And I think when we have these little tasks, because like you said, Aurora is so super complex, maybe we can take slices. Maybe we can work on this. This would be nice. Just an idea.
Step by step. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point. We don't necessarily have to have everyone understand the entire scope of our work in order to be able to meaningfully contribute with their expertise. So having some type of marketplace, as you would advertise for freelance work, essentially. This is the task I would like to have students work on. Who would be interested and capable of doing that? That sounds like a very good idea to me.
Yeah, I agree as well, and I think it's a great suggestion that would really add something to the more like timed event of having a marketplace, or of having a fair, by having this marketplace that is open throughout the year for students to be able to participate in particular opportunities. You want to stress again that also for this, like for other student participation, I think it starts with the task team being really concrete about what they want to have done, and then I am quite confident that we will always be able to match that with a student. But if it is too general, it will be difficult. So also if you are sitting in the room and you're thinking about creating then an offer like this, again, just the appeal to make it specific so that students know what they sign up for, that they know how much time they are looking to invest in that particular activity. I think that's quite important to stress as well.
We have 2 more minutes. 2 more minutes going once, twice. Okay, then this is a wrap up of our session. Thank you all very much for coming. And I want to say thank you to all my lovely panelists for agreeing to do this discussion panel. If you have any more input, questions, feedback, you know our emails, we're always available. Please feel free to reach out. And I also was asked to please, for all the students in the room, there is a student workshop starting at 2:30 this afternoon, so we would love to have you. We have some great content prepared for you, so be there. And yeah, thank you for the rest of you.
So thank you, Hanush, and all of you for this wonderful panel, for your contribution. Aurora wouldn't be what it is without the students and your contribution. And we know that for you, the effort, it's even more complicated than it could be for many of us, obviously. You have to also study and have tight schedules to go. May I invite Martin on the floor from UPEC? Is Martin here? Martin? But I don't think it's Martin. Pasquale? That's great. So, there is an ad in our agenda. We have welcomed quite some months ago our colleagues from UPEC, University Paris-Créteil, in our community, and we are so very happy that they are with us. Extraordinary participation in these first months of collaboration. And we know, and we are very happy, that the next biennial will be in Paris in May next year.
Maybe the other UPEC can come here, maybe.
Yeah, it's okay.
No?
Please, join us.
Too many.
It's also quite strange situation because Pasquale is in UPEC, but Pasquale is Italian, so it's basically...
I'm actually from near here.
Yeah, so we do everything in families. No, what we want to do, we have received in Napoli the flags of Aurora, the flag of Aurora, to organize the biennial from our colleagues and friends from Iceland. And we would like to pass this flag to our colleagues in Paris for the organization of the next biennial. So I know that this may sound a bit strange for a community like ours, but I really would like...
I'll get a flag.
to show you the Aurora flag, one of the Aurora. Yeah, I know. Believe me, that was done on purpose. So, our flag that is now being passed to Pasquale and to the colleagues on UPEC, we're wishing you, and we are sure that it will be a great biennial that we look forward to be in Paris. Thank you.
Thank you.
Colleagues. And indeed, I have mostly thank our colleagues in Iceland who first prepared those flags. That was their idea, the great idea. That's not... Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thanks, Pascal.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll try to do our best next year. Thank you.
Thanks. We all will be supporting you. So I don't know if Bruno is already here for the final remarks, but before that, I have to, now that we are somehow in the conclusion of the biennial, formally, there are still a lot of activities that will go on. We have not finished our work, but one part, a relevant part of the work is going to end now. And I feel the need, before of these remarks, to thank a lot of colleagues and friends who have been supporting me in organizing the biennial. Giorgio, Benedetta, Alessandra, Lucio, Gabriel, Giovan Giuseppe, many of them are students. When it comes out to work, sometimes students can be really, really tough and serious people, more than sometimes. But I most of all have to thank Bruno Catalanotti, that is a friend. Believe me, without Bruno, since the beginning, it would have been much more difficult to deal with Aurora. So thank you, Bruno, and to you for the final.
Oh, thank you very much. But can you hear me? Yes. Well, I should say without Alessandro as well, because without us, you stole my final conclusion. Of course, I need to anticipate. Yeah, because of course, the first contact with Aurora was Alessandro with Grenoble. Indeed, there was our first biannual there in late 2018, I think, or 19. And since then, we have done this journey together. High and low moments, of course, many difficulties, but we are really happy to have done this, and we are really happy that you are here. So I will try to do really, really few words. I don't want to bother you too much. You have attended the biannual, so you know what we have discussed about. And I should also say that since the beginning, we have planned to do the biannual in Naples in the 2024. Of course, we have chosen this date for the occurrence of a special birthday for our university. And so we thought it could be a special occasion. But we didn't thought that there were so many different coincidences to make this biannual really a special biannual. Because we can consider this biannual as a moment of, we can say, a transition in a way. We had the handover of the president. No? Atli, I can see him. Probably, of course, he's resting now. Left the keys to Martin, and this is one first transition, an important one. Of course, all our warm thanks to Jonathan for what he have done, and of course also to Martin from what he's going to do in the next years. But it's also a transition because now we are changing the Secretary General. Ramon is starting here with this first biennial. I can remember my first biennial. I was not the Secretary General. It was a sort of nightmare. I don't know what's your feeling, but I guess it's, of course, really an emotional moment, this one. All together, all in once. Again, I want to thank France and Keys for the things they have done for us. But it's also a transition because this is the first biennial of the new program. We are celebrating the final report of the first Aurora Alliance project, and we are starting in a way with the real work in the next day, the real stuff that we have to carry on in the next 4 years. And we have also discussed, or better, the president has discussed, sort of renewal, updating the strategies for this, for Aurora. I won't say network or alliance because it's still confusing also to me. So I won't go too deeper in this. We have discussed many things, from adding value through inter-university collaboration, creation of experimental spaces, the lab for change, or the necessity to engage in students and communities more deeply. Because of course, as also Gaetano was saying before, we are a huge community with many different actors, and we don't exist without all the actors. We are just one thing. We had a lot of significant moments. We had the signing of the sustainability plan. We had very inspiring roundtables where we discussed many important things, challenges for our universities and for our alliance, of course. So I hope that these 2 days were very, very significant and inspiring to give us the strength, the force to go ahead in the next years. It was for us. I should say, and I will say a personal thing, this was not a really a great moment for our engagement in Aurora because we are facing very, very difficult challenges here in Napoli. But I can say that see you here, see your commitments. It's very, very important for us and is giving us the necessary, how do you say, energy. No, energy. It's a matter of energy. We are tired a lot to go ahead, and we hope that we will continue to do this. I want to finish thanking, first of all, you, because without you, nothing was possible. These days were not possible, and the next days, because we are not finished yet. We are at half of the path, of course. And I want to also to thank all the guys that have helped us, because they were essential. Of course, as usual, we are nothing without our support. I want to thank the central office also for the support. And I want to thank Alessandro because, believe me, the main burden of the organization of this biennial was held by Alessandro. Thank you, Alessandro, very much.
So as you've understood, Aurora is a matter of friendship and being together. So this community, it's a wonderful community. We are the future that we want to build. Enough with words. The lunch is ready. Just almost, I guess. We are a bit in advance, but that's great. So please enjoy now the break. Few words for the continuing of our works. Some of the groups will be here. There are no major changes in the rooms. Probably there is just one small change, but you have been informed. We are sorry if someone will not be as efficient as we would like it to be in the meetings in the different departments. We have tried to organize everything at our best, but you know, dealing with different rooms in different places can be a bit tricky. Any problem, just write to us, call us, and to our friends and collaborators for any support, but we hope that everything will be fine. Just to remind you, the wonderful vulnerability workshop and the seismic workshop that will be held tomorrow in the different areas of the city. Thank you. I don't know if Sabine wants to say something. No? So thanks. Thanks again. One more thanks to all the staff that for our university has been working those 2 days. Without the 2-3 guys that you haven't seen, it's wonderful, great job. Grazie veramente, grazie veramente. And to all the support staff, Attilio, the photographer, and the Gennaro and the staff, thanks.